Right, well, while you're giving you a chance to sort of think of the questions that you want to ask, I think really I'd like to have a little bit more of a chat with Anthony. Really sort of thinking about when Ashton started work. Did he start with your solo? Did he start with the pas de deux? Did you start in the middle of the piece? How
no,
did it go?
I think he started in order. Whereas when I worked with Kenneth, the pas de deux were always the central thing. He wanted to get them sort of out of the way. But I think with this piece, Fred wanted to do very much in sequence. Yes, yeah.
So this is when we've only seen very little
Yes,
part of the sort of the. Could you say a little bit more about how your role develops in the work?
I always say in all these questions and interviews that I just wish the creative process was on film, because my answer is we just used to get into the room. He was absolutely crippled with nerves, although he didn't show it. He might ask for a framework of the counts, the first counts. And then it just came out of the air, especially Fred, who would sit more than Kenneth. He'd say, well, there are 8 bars, I want you. I just can't answer these questions because it was as if by magic that it developed. And that's why the roles by Ashton and Macmillan were like tailor-made. They were fitted you like a glove, and you felt you'd almost created a sort of 85% of it. Or you try something, he gave you the freedom for trying something. He said, well, I don't like that, but turn it round. Or I like that, but double up the rhythm here. Or maybe, yes. It just was such a collaborative process.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's very obvious, because it is, when you look at it, it is so tailor-made for you. How do you therefore feel about passing on some of these roles to other dancers?
That's actually very interesting. I mean, I've always said you can't freeze things, and that, each dancer who gets to a level of up there, they've got there because of their own qualities. And sometimes you might see them doing something and you think, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. But you must respect what the language is. But each dancer has their own unique personality, and it'll bring something different to it, yeah. So it's a very interesting process, actually. I have no feelings, oh God, you should do it like that or whatever. It's just, and if they're responsive, I mean, it's the most wonderful experience, yeah.
I'd also like to ask you a little bit about this whole sort of idea that you have had your roles created in one place, and then you go and insert them into. How is it like working with John Dexter, for example, to bring the elements together?
Actually, with Rossignol, it was very much, the direction was more of what the set was doing and how we fitted into it. So from that point of view, he was really moving the singers around and fitting Natasha into it. I mean, just a bit of an aside, the history of this triple bill. They had a meeting, Ashton, Dexter and Hockney, and it got to Oedipus, and they had a very eminent, respected actor lined up to narrate Oedipus, and they were talking about it, and I had just narrated Wedding Bouquet, and Fred, in his very practical way, well, you've got Dowell here, why not let him do it? It was a sort of economic reason. I don't know whether the Met thought that was a nice way of saving money, because it was actually lined up for Christopher Plummer. So I was terrified. Dexter was very famous and infamous as a sort of sacred monster in the theatre world. I've talked to many actors who went, oh my God, John Dexter. Brilliant as he was, but he was very tricky. So we had a lunch. I had a lunch with Dexter, very nervous. And I said, look, please, you've been roped into this. I've only narrated once. It's been done like a package deal. For God's sake, say now. And he went, no, we'll try. So I had a series of rehearsals with him, hardly any corrections. The empty Metropolitan Opera House, because the way it was set up, there was the orchestra, and I was on a sort of black throne halfway between the orchestra and the stage, and then the action went on 2 levels. And then one rehearsal, he went right up the top of the Met, and I did all the speeches, and they said, I can't do that, I can't do that. And that was all, and I did. I can't believe I actually did it. I mean, it must have been sort of the bravery of youth somehow, because I think the only thing I did once was I wrote, because originally I was going to read it like a lectern, and then we learned it, and I had the initials of each speech on my wrist. And a cough sweet in my dinner jacket pocket. But no, I mean, it was a wonderful experience, the whole thing.
Yes. I'd quite like to bring Gary in about working in this. Yes, the two of you. So working in this sort of situation. So it's a production you don't really know.
And
you know nothing about it.
Never heard of it before, I have to be honest. So yes, it's completely fresh to me. I don't know if you'd know.
So you get the.
It was really like the Holy Grail when we found it. So to actually have the footage, and the footage is so gorgeous because at the very end of it, you see Ashton get up and start demonstrating various poses with Anthony and Natasha, and it's so lovely just to actually have him there on film. So it was a real thrill to actually see it and watch it.
So in terms of doing a production that you have no knowledge of, obviously having Anthony available to
not remember it,
but also to have that, obviously having had that first-hand experience.
Yeah.
So even if you don't remember the detail, you know how Ashton thought and everything like that. And obviously you've had some experience of.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to dance Ashton. I unfortunately missed out on the opportunity to actually work with him. So sadly he passed away when I joined. No, you. I think as you grow up through the company, you have a sense of what is expected of Ashton. So I have a fairly good idea of, I think, what he would like or expect. And as you say, by having Anthony in there as well, it kind of then helps set the scene, make it even fuller and grander than what it is. So I just do the steps and counts, and you do the counts more.
No, but as I said, I couldn't have done it without these two. Because
so it is literally just a framework that we put together, and then Anthony has moulded it and fattened it up, which is great.
Right, I think I'd better open it up to the audience with your questions, and we do have 2 dancers as well. I wanted to give them some breathing space before they're faced with questions, but
What?
Stephanie.
First, thanks everyone for a wonderful start. I just wondered about the counts, because the ones you use now, they come and go. Sometimes you're silent, sometimes you say counts. And I wondered, were the Ashtons, are you using a music score that was used originally, so there's some information in the score?
No. Sorry, did everyone hear the question?
Actually, Michael, you could answer
counts.
this better than anybody.
So essentially, Stephanie is asking about the counts used now, and how far they related to what Ashton might have used, or whether how far they relate to Stravinsky's score or the piano score is being used.
I don't think that there was a score that was actually written up, was there? There's no notation, there's no score. So Lorraine and Michael between them have literally got the counts together, and we've found how it's worked with the music, and we've actually putting the footage together with the score. It was quite difficult to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's purely down to them.
Yes.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of movement in the pas de deux, which is off the vertical. Is that what it feels like? Does it feel quite hazardous? It makes it very exciting to look at.
The question is about the movement being off the vertical, and how exciting is that?
Yes, and I think our first rehearsal, we tried everything very upright, and it was through maybe our second rehearsal that then we were able to find the off-balance moments, and I think that's what makes it look like she's flying and kind of hovering. She's almost never, which makes it quite a challenge when you're over your point tune, you're trying to get your whole body weight up again.
I mean, the thing with Ashton is that you would dance the steps all of us classically trained, we have this core which is very upright, and as a dancer you find your own balance, so you can turn well and you can do things in your own balance, and then you come in front of Ashton, who just, you've heard it all before, just bends and bends you and like takes the tablecloth from underneath your feet, and you have to find your own way, again, another balance of dancing his choreography, because if you're straight, he hated anything like that, and it's very boring too. And you see now, I'm afraid, sometimes with dancers, however technical and how much the legs go up, they operate without this, and it's sort of meaningless from the front.
You made many roles with Ashton. You were also working with Makarova, and you'd grown up with the Ashtonian Royal Band.
Yeah.
You were also in this working with Makarova, who came from a different tradition.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
So the question is about the relationship with working with Makarova, because Anthony and Natasha come from very different traditions.
And you had a lot of experience with Ashton, and she...
Yes, she was wonderfully unpredictable. That's what made the performances exciting. And sometimes I could have put an axe through her head, but that's another story. But when I first worked with her, it was on her own territory, like in Giselle and Swan Lake. And from the Ashton lines, which was very like this, the Russian way is very open and like this, and I had to find where, and it was quite difficult. I found it quite frustrating to find what she wanted. I mean, what made it easy? Her body was like sprung steel. It was incredible. You could just manipulate it with the slightest touch. When she came onto my territory in Manon, it was a different story, and I took over. And so this was after Manon, where we both found, well, a way of recreating two new pas de deux and things, and we were both on the same territory. So there were moments where things, were interesting, but it was, you'll see on this film the extraordinary quality she had, yes.
It's quite sorry, I was just going to say, it's quite interesting because when you described it earlier, you said that the Nightingale was quite plain in comparison to then the mechanical band. But when we've been rehearsing it, we've been saying that
it's so exotic.
Anna needs to be more exotic.
Yeah.
Because Natasha is so exotic, isn't it?
Sir Fred was very worried, and he said to me in an aside, "Don't let her take it to Swan Lake." So that's why it's more fluttery. He didn't want her to become Odette.
I think it's probably a different sort of exoticism.
Very
Basically,
different,
it's in terms of the idea of the Nightingale, the exoticism is traditionally in the voice, and you've got the singer alongside.
Yeah.
But what the audience is seeing on stage is the bird, and so that bird has got to convey the song through her movement.
Absolutely.
And therefore there is an exoticism in that sense, but it's not the showy...
But I just thought Natasha
yes.
to being a plain ordinary
Plain was
Nightingale.
not a word.
Yes, no.
It's very folk-y.
It's that whole sort of thing of interpreting sound
Through
in movement.
Yes.
This is actually a very different thing. So yes. Sorry, we had another question here. Thank you.
It always fascinates me how dancers do pass things on from generation to generation, and that's one of the great things about dance. I always wonder how much gets lost, and would Pettifer recognise Swan Lake, would Tolkien recognise Father? What would Fred think today? How much gets lost?
So the question is, how much has got lost?
I think when you've got the original creators passing it on, it doesn't get lost because it's in their bodies and their system. Where it can get lost sometimes is where, productions, I don't know. I think there's a great danger, yes. And also different cultures of companies where in the Royal Ballet we treated the choreographer, Ashton Macmillan, like the gods. They were the stars. Yes, we had the stars in the company, but we would have jumped through far from them. What I've noticed over the years and with guest artists, that they don't, that's not in their culture to respect it. I mean, there was one instance with something who shall be absolutely nameless, because I'll probably be sued, but where a couple in a Romeo balcony pas de deux, I was out front watching, and at the end they did the Manon lift from the Manon bedroom. And I said to them, you can't do that. And they replied, well, I won't even do the accent because that would give it away. But they said, but this is a Macmillan ballet. You know, they felt that, well, that's the same. One thing from Romeo can go into Manon or vice versa. Certain cultures, they don't. We've had that, and we've been so fortunate in having these incredible creative forces, which is what Madame believed in, which is the lifeblood of a company. And we would have done anything for them, and we wouldn't change anything without their permission. Yeah. But there is a danger, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's worth adding that that's why events like this are so important, so that we do have the creators of the role passing on to the next generation, and so that there is that sort of truth that's being passed on, even if you can't remember all the details.
I mean, and also too, quality of film now is so much better. When the dress rehearsals are filmed now, there's sort of no doubt, is there no question of what, if you've got a newly created ballet, you see what the choreographer wanted. So that will help a bit. But yeah, it's a danger. Yeah.
Do we have another question over there? Yes, thank you.
You'd have to speak to the Royal Opera, I mean, to Papano about that, because it's an opera. Yeah. Yeah.
It's always a very difficult thing to get the works that are ballet and opera performed anywhere.
It was a lovely triple bill. I mean, it's, you know, there's no reason why it couldn't be revived. Yeah.
It was pretty good as a double bill over here.
Yes. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think now is the time when the screen is going to be lowered, and you will now see the film which has been referred to so often during the course of this afternoon.
Thank you.
So mind your heads, I think, is the expression now.